Kamloops Secwepemc territory. We are here at the webinar, Indigenous Empowerment and Resistance, Voices from the Frontlines. This webinar is dedicated to Wolverine, William Jones Ignis, a Chipatan defender at Gustafson Lake standoff in 1995. Now 20 years later, we are still on the front lines fighting our fight for our Indigenous territories. We have with us some special guests and strong advocates for our land, human rights defenders, warriors on the front lines. We have with us today Freda and Toggestai from the Wet'suwet'en Nation. They have been occupying their lands, stopping 7 proposed pipelines in the Unistoten clan territory. We also have with us Matthew Danes from the Tsimshian Nation. He is right now a part of the Pacific Northwest LNG protest of a terminal for liquid natural gas in their territory. Also, we have with us Ricardo Segovia, a hydrogeologist from the nonprofit E-Tech International. He has traveled with me many times to ground zero of the Mount Polley disaster, and he also lends his hand and work at Ecuador and Peru, who also have poor regulated mining and oil projects. What we're facing today in BC is that the majority of BC is unceded, unsurrendered lands. There has never been a treaty or purchase of our lands, and our people are forced on the front lines, battling with the aggressive resource extraction industry. Myself and my territory here in Secwepemc Ulu, we've been fighting the Imperial Metals Mine, along with the tourism industry, Sun Peak Ski Resort, water extractions, and the pipelines. So we have no shortage of things to be protecting our territory. I would like to start off with Freda and seeing if she would be able to introduce herself and the work that she's been doing to defend her territories. Freda, can...
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Freda Houston, Hudson spokesperson appointed by my hereditary chiefs, and I've been living on our territory for about 6 years, and we moved out there because there were many pipelines that were proposed to go through our territory, and we found that we couldn't protect it from our reservation because it was 2 hours away, and they kept trying to go in without our consent. So we decided would be better able to protect the territories if we actually moved out there. And for the last probably few years before I moved out, my dad kept telling me that your strongest ammunition against the province and anyone else that's trying to take over your lands is to occupy them. And he explained that they've occupied a lot of our territories and turned them into municipalities, agricultural lands, is because they physically occupied those lands. So we'd made a decision that we were going to occupy our lands and start growing communities out there so that we can continue to protect our lands from incursions from many of industries that are trying to destroy our lands. So we've been doing that for a while, and my chiefs fully support what we're doing, and everything that we do say out there has to go by my chief. So we are not alone, as many of the media, mainstream media, tries to say we're just a small disgruntled group working alone, and we have full support of the other 4 clans. Through our hereditary systems, we have 5 clans, which is different and separate than band councils. And our system has been there for thousands of years, and it has not died. It's still alive and well, and all our land decisions are made in our feast hall, not around a boardroom table. And we've been out there this summer. Everything got heated, and the police were harassing us and stopping all our guests and visitors down at 27-kilometer mark, which is probably about 40 kilometers from our camp. Our camp 66 kilometers from the main highway from Houston, BC, and at the 27-kilometer mark, the police were stopping a lot of people and getting their driver's license and their plate numbers, and they didn't need to get driver's license because unless you have a highway infraction, they shouldn't be taking that, and they were recording people's license, and then now they're harassed on the planes, people that were just basically coming to visit as well, like a lot of elders, people with children, and so yeah. What happened?
I'd like to see if you would be able to explain to the viewers. I've traveled up there many times to Unistoten camp with my children and my family, and on our first visit we went up to the Morris River and to the bridge, and we had to do a certain protocol to be allowed into your territory, and I learned a lot from those protocols. Would you be able to share with the viewers about those protocols and why that's important?
Okay, every visitor that comes to our checkpoint, which is at the bridge there's a single lane bridge, and that's the only way you can get into our territory, and every visitor, industry or friends, guests have to go through protocol at the bridge, and we ask the questions: who are you? Where are you from? How long you plan to stay if we let you in? Do you work for industry or government that's destroying our lands? And what kind of skills do you bring? And how will your visit benefit Unistoten? And the purpose of these questions is to find out enough information about the individuals that are coming in to ensure the safety of our guests that are already in the camp, and also to ensure that it is not industry trying to come in and pretend that they're guests. So we ask a lot of questions, and if we're unsure, we ask even further questions to ensure that the people who they are, say they are, that are coming in, and even if they do pass the protocol questions, if we're still unsure about them, we'll monitor them while they're visiting to ensure that they're not taking photos like they would if they were infiltrators to try and gather intelligence for be the police or military to make it easier for them to remove us from our lands. So we're very careful on who comes in, and as well because through our traditions we're liable for all our guests that come in, so we ensure that the safety of our guests and the safety of our people, because we don't want to end up having a liability if somebody gets hurt within our territory. So we ensure we have that protocol to keep people safe, not only them safe, but as well as our people safe, to ensure that the safety of our people.
So here in the province of so-called British Columbia, right now there's a big word being used of consent, and that a lot of Indigenous people are not giving their consent. They do not give consent for pipelines projects, mining projects, clear-cut logging, fish farms. We saw one of our comrades on the islands that were successful in kicking out a fish farm this past summer. So we know this big word consent, and a lot of people might not know what that means out in the general public. Would you be able to explain what consent means and why that's important for our people, that term?
Well, people need to, industry especially, or anybody according to our culture and our traditions, anybody that wants to do anything on Unistoten territory must have the consent of the chiefs and its house members, and none of these industries that are proposing their projects have received consent from our chiefs, or like our hereditary chiefs, not band council chiefs, hereditary chiefs and house members. Each clan, there's 5 clans within the Wet'suwet'en Nation, and there's Toghestiy, Leksamasu, Tayu, Gidimdan, and Leksiliu. There's 5 different clans, and the Unistoten belong to the Toghestiy clan. So Toghestiy is the only one that can give consent, and it has to be collective consent. No individual can go out there and say they have given permission to anybody. You have to have the collective consent of a clan, and we don't do any of our business around a boardroom table. I explained that already. Everything is done in our feast hall, and my chiefs and our clan held numerous feasts. We had a smoke feast where we hired people to revisit our maps and do correction of the maps, because there was a lot of errors in the maps. So, and we also made an announcement in this feast that absolutely no pipelines will be coming through our territory. And we did that in front of the other 4 clans as witnesses that we said no pipelines will come through our territories, and that's our governance structure, and that is where any industry or any person wanting to do anything on our lands needs to come into our feast hall, and none of those people have. They've visited boardroom tables, they've actually held meetings in fancy motels and paid people's way to come to these meetings, and actually used that band council system to invite our people to meetings, saying that they were only gonna gather information, like they were providing information to them, and then all of a sudden it wasn't just information sessions anymore. We got letters stating that at a consulting meeting you agreed to these terms, and they tried to say that we agreed that they could come on our territory, and we never did. So to have meaningful consulting, they actually have to come into our feast hall, explain the good and the bad, because a lot of their consulting is they meet with bands and they tell them all these jobs, you're going to get all these jobs. It's safe, it's clean, it's just going to dissipate into the air, and there's no such thing. If a pipeline breaks for their frack gas, it's going to explode. It's not going to just dissipate into the air, and it's going to have mass destruction and fire to destroy our territories. And our people are being lied to, saying it's just going to dissipate into the air. So they haven't been doing meaningful consultation at all. They haven't really physically met with our people. They've come to the bridge and said, just tell us what they're going to do, and they've not even asking permission. They're trying to say, we are going to do this, and we need permission to access your territory. And they're saying, are you blocking us from coming in, from doing our work? And the province is the one that's been issuing out these permits without even consulting with First Nations people, and we tell the province that those are illegitimate permits because you have not received consent, you have never consulted with our people.
Yes, could you also let a sort of draw an image or a picture of how it is up at Unistoten Camp? I know that on our last visit we stayed in a very beautiful community kitchen bunkhouse, and you have a bunch of different buildings there that people have come and built. Can you tell everybody how it is up there at your home?
Well, once you cross over the bridge after you've passed protocol, there's a bunkhouse on the left side of the road which can sleep up to 20 people. It's got a nice wood stove, shower, and a lot of private quarters where there's partition walls with curtains so people can have some privacy. And there's also just the past year, the same crew that initiated the bunkhouse, so what they did is they ran a fundraising campaign and raised $40,000 just for the materials for the bunkhouse. And we had up to 50 volunteers throughout the 3-week period in May that came in to construct that building. And just this past spring and May, we ran another 3-week camp, and again, another group of people did fundraising and raised, I think it was up to $50,000 to build the first part of the healing center, which is a commercial kitchen and a dining hall, and that's phase 1 of our healing center that we thought was a long-off dream of ours. But once these supporters heard that we wanted to build a healing center, they jumped on it and said they wanted to fundraise and help us make that happen. So this past spring, in 3 weeks, we put up the structure, and it's got a commercial kitchen, dining hall, and upstairs there's room for workshops. And phase 2 will have a lobby and some counseling rooms, and then phase 3 will actually have more sleeping quarters for families and patients that will come in, like community members. We want to run family camps, youth camps, and bring holistic healing to our people. Would be spiritual, mental, and cultural, because we find that if you don't have holistic healing, people are disconnected from the land and they're not going to protect the land. And the residential schools did their job to take the Indian out of the child, and our hopes is for our healing center to put the Indian back in the child so that our people can become a strong nation again and reconnect to the land and start protecting the land so that it'll be there for many generations to come. And we also live in there's a cabin that was the first structure that was put up, was right in the GPS route of Pacific Trails Pipeline and Coastal Gas, Enbridge were the 2 initial projects that were proposed. So we put the cabin right in the GPS route, and Toggestai and I have been living there for about 5-6 years now, and we live there full time because we've lost up to 6 to 8 cabins throughout Wet'suwet'en territory from industry, governmental organizations that wanted to do work on our territory. And when we had opposition to them, it's a matter of weeks and months, they end up burning down our cabins. So we now do not leave our cabin unoccupied for that very reason, for fear that they will burn down our cabins. So we ensure that there's always somebody there, and so there is always somebody there. We never leave it open, and we welcome visitors to come and check it out and see what we're doing. And we drink water right out of the river. That's one of the only rivers that is still clean, that you can physically take a cup and drink water out of it.
Okay, thank you, Freda. I'd like to ask Toggestai to introduce yourself and your title in your territory or your clans, and also you're also talking about building in your clan's territory. Can you let us know a little bit about your plans, or not like we want to reveal so much, but please inform all the listeners out there about your fight.
Okay, my name is Toghestiy. I'm a hereditary chief of the Leelu clan. I come from the Sun House. Our people are called People of the Sky, and we have quite a few territories out amongst the other Wet'suwet'en territories. And one of the particular territories that we're focusing on right now is a territory called Mistiqua, which is on the north shore of Francois Lake, and there's a place called Allen Creek that is the site of where many of these proposed pipelines want to cross, and they don't have our consent. Like Freda said, that these pipeline companies, anybody who wants to do any business on our territories needs our consent. Our clan has met quite a few times in the past. We've actually held a feast as well, announcing to the rest of the Wet'suwet'en population that we are against all pipelines from coming through our territories. I started meeting with some of my chiefs last fall or last summer to begin discussing the idea of actually putting a cabin up on our territory. And we went through the process of actually locating a cabin building kit that was designed and prefabbed for our people, a log cabin building kit, and it was sitting under snow for quite a few years, and we went and had a look at it, and it's still in very good condition. We just need to actually build a foundation for it and get a roof and the doors and windows and stuff. So we're going to be doing that this spring. There's a winter campaign that we're going to be starting really soon that will allow us to hopefully begin raising funds to put a cabin up in our territory to stop these pipelines as well. And like Freda said, you can't leave those cabins empty. We're going to make sure that somebody's staying in that cabin full time. And we'll probably go through something similar to what they've done. We're going to be looking for volunteers to come out and help us with that process and help us occupy the site and reestablish ourselves out on the territories. Because one of the most important things that I think is important to point out as Indigenous people is our territories were abandoned. Since we were first forced onto reservations, our territories were abandoned. The animals that kept us company out there, the land, the medicines, the plants, all of those knew who we were. There was an intimate relationship that we had with them, and that relationship was severed. It was severed when the Indian Act came in and we were first forced onto reservations. So we need to get off the reservations, we need to get out of urban centers, and go find ourselves in our lands again, because our ancestors are waiting for us to come home.
Could you tell the viewers a little bit more about the action camp that organized and planned at the Unseated camp, and also I know that I keep on hearing these words of consent, permits, unceded lands. Could you help share with the viewers, like, what does unceded lands mean and the power behind it for those that might not know?
Well, the Wet'suwet'en, like many other people in British Columbia, I think there's only like 3 nations in BC right now, maybe 4, one tiny one, but that have never signed a treaty with the government, any government. So the government of BC, when they first joined Confederation under the assumption that the Dominion of Canada at that time had met all of its prerequisites to form its own country. So British Columbia was separate from, as well as all the other provinces, were separate from each other. And when they decided to join a confederation, they needed to meet certain standards. In order to meet those certain standards, one of the standards that they had to meet, one of the prerequisites they had to meet to join confederation was that they appeased the Indigenous population, that the Indigenous population is okay with them joining a confederation, and that didn't happen. They just came in and said, yeah, that's been met, and they went ahead and formed the province of British Columbia. No treaties were signed. We have no relationship with the province or the federal government. They forced us onto reservations and off of our land so that they can go ahead and begin opening mines, developing logging activities, and now they're putting in pipelines. Agriculturalists came in. They've come in and decimated our territories to a point where the territories can't really sustain us. So when we talk about, you know, unceded territory, that's what we're talking about. There are no treaties in BC. BC is one of the last places in North America where Indigenous people have never signed any agreements with any government in the past. So that's where we sit today with that.
Okay, thank you.
Also, the action camp, I guess, we had the 5th annual action camp recently. The 6th annual action camp. The first action camp we had was organized with a lot of ENGOs. The ENGOs came in and helped us develop an action camp. Following that year, the next season, the ENGOs actually jumped ship on us and decided to begin forming an action camp for our neighbors who had all signed agreements with fracking companies to begin the process of allowing fracking pipelines through their territories. We said absolutely no to all fracking and all oil pipelines through territories, but the ENGOs decided to jump ship from what we were doing and go with this other group of people, and so we decided to go grassroots. You know, this past summer was the 5th year that we've had an actual grassroots action camp. All the funds that come from regular folk, people who support Indigenous people fighting for their lands, people who are willing to do what they can within their capacity to make things change in a good way.
Okay, thank you. I know I've traveled up to Unistoten, the Unistoten camp many times, and my children, they love it up there. We went and dipped in the cold water there, drank right from the river, like you said, and it hurts my heart when I see things like the Mount Polley disaster in our territory, and that really the government does not care about cleaning up the mess. The government is continuing to issue permits to these mining companies and pipeline companies without the consent of the Indigenous people. I'd like to bring on Ricardo Segovia. He's traveled with me many times to Ground Zero of the Mount Polley disaster, an Imperial Metals company. Canada remains one of the top mining countries in the world, and we see Canadian mining companies going all throughout the world, Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, you name it. These Canadian mining companies are going and not only destroying the land, but they are destroying the social structure of the people. They are killing Indigenous people that are standing up and fighting for their territories. I'd like to ask Ricardo to introduce himself, sort of give a little update on what you do when you go down to Central and South America and you help the natives there, but also give us an image of what you saw when you went to the Mount Polley disaster for the first time.
Thank you so much, Kanahus. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I want to thank you a lot, Kanahus, for having me in this company and being surrounded by these frontliners, these people who are really battling it out every day. On the other hand, I'm more of an armchair frontliner most of the time here in Vancouver, here in the city. But you pulled me into this because I think you recognize the value of having technical people around when these battles for land defense are going on. I work with a nonprofit called eTech International, and most of our work is down in Ecuador and Peru. And it's basically very similar to what's happening here in BC, where companies come in. In the case of Peru, we're working in an oil-producing region where it's been contaminated for over 40 years. And we're working with communities that want to make plans for remediation. They want training on how to do their own environmental monitoring. And they want technical advice when they have meetings with the government. They want to make sure they're not, with a lot of technocratic language, they're not getting the wool pulled over their eyes. And so we're there for that as well. In Ecuador, we're working with communities that are affected by mining companies. Mining just going to start in Ecuador, big large-scale mines. And we're trying to analyze all the environmental impact assessments and call them out on their bullshit, basically. Because these mines are very badly designed, just like the tailings dam at Mount Polley, and it's very likely that those kind of things would fail. So when Kanahus pulled me into this, I think, like I was saying, she recognizes that we all have a part to play in this. And I make a call out to technical people out there to get involved in land defense. A lot of young people feel like they have no other options except to go work in Alberta, to go work for Shell, to go work for a fracking company, to go work for a consulting company that works for all these big mines and all these big oil companies. But there's other options out there. You got to get involved in land defense. We have the privilege of getting these little pieces of paper, living in Vancouver and getting a piece of paper that says engineer, says PhD, whatever it may be. I've got an engineering degree. It's sitting somewhere in a drawer covered in coffee stains, because that piece of paper means nothing. What matters is what you're going to do with that piece of paper. What you're going to do with these skills that you picked up. Are you going to continue this chain of reactions, a chain of imperial invasions into BC and into other lands? Are you going to contribute to that, or are you going to contribute to the land defenders? So I'm saying there is other options, and you can be a land defender. Engineers can be land defenders as well. Lawyers can be land defenders. Soil scientists can be land defenders. And everybody has a specific set of skills. Somebody who spends most of their time in the bush, they have their own specific set of skills. They can survive out there. If I go out in the bush, I'll last 5 minutes, you know. The only salmon I know how to catch is at the sushi restaurants here in Vancouver, so that's not my skill set. But what I bring to this is soil science, geotechnical engineering, and that's where I'm trying to help. So that brings me to the case of Mount Polley. When this disaster happened, I was doing all my work in Peru and Ecuador, and I realized I had to do something where I'm living. This is happening right here, right now. This is coming down the Fraser River. The Fraser's right there, a few miles from my house. So I had to get involved. And if technical people just perk up their ears and listen, and start listening, there is a call from frontliners. They're saying, come and be with us. It's come and stand with us. Come and walk with us. So I got that call from Kanahus, and we went up to the Mount Polley site. I've been up there 8 months after the disaster. Maybe we can go to some of the photos now. If you can go to photo number 6. Somebody can bring that up on the slides. You'll see here, we went up to the site and walked the entire length of Hazeltine Creek. It was a really sketchy walk. It was late at night. We had to go in there at night, so we didn't have any trouble getting in there. And so some of these photos are taken with a long time exposure, so they look like they're in the daytime. So we went up there, and there's an ocean of tailings still on the ground 8 months later. 8 months later, when the so-called remediation was happening, the so-called restoration, there's still an ocean of tailings on the ground surface. All the work was being done on the tailings dam. That was being fixed in a hurry, because what really worries the company is to keep producing. So they want to get the tailings dam fixed so they can keep dumping stuff into the tailings dam. Whereas the trucks that were doing the so-called cleanup down below were sitting idle. Those weren't moving at all. The guys were on vacation for Easter, and up at the tailings it was really busy. So if you go to another photo, this time scroll down to photo number 8 and number 9. So down closer to Quilnell Lake, they built some sediment ponds as part of their restoration, so-called restoration. What's actually happening is they're cutting a new channel where what used to be Hazeltine Creek was completely devastated. What used to be Hazeltine Creek is now a channel that's been cut into tailings. So they're not removing the tailings. Those tailings are toxic and they should be removed. The tailings are suffocating trees. They're not letting oxygen get to the roots, and those trees are dying and falling over. So as we walked up the valley, it was really sketchy because we had a lot of trees hanging over our heads. We had a lot of tailings piled high and the water cutting through the tailings, so it was really unstable. We got stuck in the tailings a couple of times. These settlement ponds are not doing anything. In this photo here, you can see where in some parts the tailings haven't piled up, but they've scraped away all the organic material from the valley, scraped it right down to the bedrock. It was a war zone up there. And so once all the topsoil has been scraped off, nothing's going to grow back, and nothing's being done to restore that topsoil, that growing medium. And where there is tailings, that soil is not going to be something where trees can grow. This is high in copper, high in zinc. It's over the limits according to the company's own analysis, and this is not going to be restored unless the tailings are hauled away. So we went up there again 12 months later, and this is what we saw 12 months later, still a devastated landscape, and the silence was deafening. That's what really got me. It was so silent, it felt like I was sitting at a cemetery. And when we were there, we still saw the same quote-unquote restoration. They're cutting a channel into tailings, throwing down some big rocks so they wouldn't wash away, and then in other places throwing down some mulch. None of the tailings being hauled away. If you go down to picture 13, so here you see an otter swimming right at the mouth of Hazeltine Creek, what used to be Hazeltine Creek. Now, to add insult to injury, not only did the mine get a permit to reopen, now they have a permit to discharge toxic water directly into Quilnell Lake. So that toxic water first pours into what used to be Hazeltine Creek. It goes through these settlement ponds, these useless sediment ponds, and then it gets pumped down into Quilnell Lake. They're talking about that they're saying it's okay because there's a dilution zone. A dilution zone is the kind of thing you want to use in an urban waterway where you're throwing down some sewage, some treated sewage, and you think the bacteria levels are going to be diluted enough so that when it gets to a beach and people are swimming, they're not going to get contaminated. In this case, we're not talking about an urban setting. We're talking about a pristine river and a pristine lake, what used to be a pristine river, and a pristine lake, Quilnell Lake, that salmon depend on, that the people depend on. And this otter swimming right at the mouth of Hazeltine Creek where this toxic water is coming out. They didn't get the memo about the 100-meter dilution zone. Neither did the fish. They're not going to avoid that area where the water going into the lake is over the limit for the BC standards. That's toxic water they're swimming through. And so the province hasn't shown us any evidence that it's safe to discharge this water into Quilnell Lake. It hasn't shown us any calculations about this dilution zone, these 100 meters. It seems to me they pulled that number out of their ass because they still haven't shown us any justification for it. And so now they're allowed over 2 years to dump 18 million cubic meters of polluted water into Quilnell Lake. That's 18 billion liters of polluted water. They consider this short term and they consider this a low impact. What I'm asking is, where's the evidence that this is safe? And why isn't one of the options to just shut the mine down? That's my biggest question. Kanahus, did you have any other questions?
Thank you. I know you traveled with me. We went to the Quilnell River Research Center. It's a research center by the University of Northern British Columbia, and we went and talked to some of the researchers there, and we found out that there was 10 meters of tailings, they said, at the bottom of Quilnell Lake. That was really disturbing. And what's also really disturbing is that this discharge permit that the province just approved to give Mount Polley Imperial Metals just a couple of weeks ago, or actually on November 30th, that it does not meet the drinking water guidelines or the aquatic life guidelines to discharge into a pristine environment, because they say Hazeltine Creek is now a non-fish bearing creek. And we look at this and the state of our rivers and our creeks and our lakes in this so-called province of BC, and it seems to me that the province is trying to really make all of our water non-fish bearing so they can continue to discharge these toxins and contaminants. The tailings, the mining tailings are waste. For people that don't know and the viewers that are listening to this, tailings are mining waste, and tailings are full of heavy metals, copper, selenium, mercury, processing chemicals that impact the aquatic life. Could you sort of talk about, you traveled and you talked to some of the likely residents, and you stayed the night there at one of the residents of likely their homes.
Mm-hmm.
If you can recall some of the concerns that they were facing, the fears that they were facing with their water.
Basically, the lake started changing color after the tailings disaster. And then recently, again, when the discharge permit was given, they started discharging on December 1st. The lake changed color again. And the province has the same answer always. It's perfectly safe. There's nothing wrong with the lake. There's a reason why the lake is changing color. There's copper concentrations. There's other metals in that. The type of treatment that they're giving this discharge water before it's going into Hazeltine Creek and then into Quesnel, it's basically just taking out some solids. It doesn't even talk about taking out the dissolved stuff in this water, and that's what's really dangerous to the fish, is what's dissolved in that discharge water. Just for some background, for people that don't know, when the tailings dam broke, 25 million cubic meters of toxic material spilled out of Hazeltine Creek. Now they're talking about another 18 million cubic meters being discharged on purpose. So it's like a second failure, basically. And it's a second failure of the regulators in this province. It's a second failure of the BC government. They can't be considered regulators anymore. With this latest permit, they're proving that they'll basically let Imperial Metals do whatever they want. If Imperial says, oh, we're going to discharge now into the drinking water into the Seymour Reservoir of Vancouver, no, I'm sure the province will sign that permit as well. They will basically do whatever Imperial Metals asks for because they're not willing to shut down the mine. This is the kind of mining mafia we're dealing with right now in the province.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. We're going to go on to the next speaker. I'll do a quick introduction. This is Matthew Daines from the Tsimshian Nation, Gikwilgiyat's territory. I know you could correct me to say it properly, but you've been occupying a piece of your territory to stop LNG project, a terminal for tankers for liquefied natural gas. Could you do another quick introduction of yourself and let us know what it's like there at Leelu Island, and a little description of whereabouts it's located in so-called British Columbia?
Hi there. Matthew Daines. I'm from Hartley Bay, British Columbia, which is also known as Gitgata. I'm also from the Tsimshian Nation. I've been at Leelu Island for 12 weeks now. The Smoigit of the territory is Yahan, which is Donald Wesley Sr., and the House Leader of the area is Gwisawal, which is Ken Lawson, which is they're both from Las Palmas, and this is Gikwilgiyat's territory, Leelu Island, which is located just a little bit south of Prince Rupert, outside of Port Ed. What it's like out there, it's the last few days have been, it's been pretty crazy, I guess you could call it. Frontlines, like our fight is out on the water because we have 2 barges and a drill rig that have been going steady for ever since roughly the late August. They've been drilling for samples, core samples, they have subcontractors all working for the Pacific Northwest LNG. And they have a proposed project on Leelu Island, which is a terminal for a tanker route. Can we go to a question?
We have a slide showing. I don't know if you could see it. It shows the, for the viewers, they could see the picture of the proposed terminal or port. I saw the footage that was put out by Submedia TV and Franklin Lopez of the confrontations on the water with the RCMP. The RCMP is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. For the viewers that aren't sure, it's a Canadian police force. It's the colonial police force that have been faced off against Wolverine, shot off 77,000 rounds at him, exploded, landmines, and deployed armored personnel carriers and 450 police against them. Canada uses the police to deal with the unsettled Indian land question here in unceded territories in British Columbia. And I saw the footage, and I saw how the RCMP brought the boats out there and were confronting the frontline defenders. Could you tell me a little bit about what the police's role in protecting the corporation is?
Well, we've been trying to keep the relationship between the RCMP and the camp itself. But the day the video was shot was it was kind of they kind of lied to us about that. They told us they weren't going to escort the drill rig out because we were going to go attempt to stop it. Well, actually, we did try and stop it, but they were escorted by 2 RCMP boats right after we'd contacted the RCMP and let them know that we were going to engage the drill rig when it was coming out, and they were escorted by 2 RCMP boats.
Okay. Can you let the viewers know that the importance of defending this area? I heard about the flora banks. Could you tell us a little bit more about the flora banks and what kind of food that your people depend on for their survival and the impact that this will have on your food source?
Yeah, this is the estuary for the salmon run through the Skeena River. It's a natural habitat for the salmon run up the Skeena. It's where they sit until they become big enough to go back out into the ocean to do the run back up the Skeena. So it's like it's pretty delicate for the salmon. Like the eelgrass, they depend on the eelgrass to hide from bigger predators and stuff. And there's all different kinds of life form, and I'd say about I'm gonna guess 80% of the people rely on the sockeye run every year. The picture you're looking at right now, that's Skeena River sockeye. You preserve the food. You only take what you need when you need.
So our salmon is being contaminated, our salmon is being impacted by the aggressive resource extraction industry, and it's something that links all of us as Indigenous people straight across this so-called province of British Columbia, all the way down to our relatives all along the coast, down into, Washington State and Oregon. We all depend on this salmon, and salmon is being impacted, and that's what we say. We're speaking for the salmon. We're speaking for those that cannot speak for themselves. But I feel that as Indigenous people, when we don't have money, we know how we eat salmon all day long because that's the only thing that we have in our cupboards to feed our children. And this is why our people have taken such a strong stance in defense of our territories. Our salmon are being impacted, our water is being impacted, our territories. There's There's so much issues that Indigenous people are facing, whether it's clear-cut logging, fish farms, fracking, the tar sands, mining, all these pipelines that they're pushing in, the water theft, bottling up our water and taking it from our mountains, and mass tourism. These are all really impacting Indigenous people, these industries that have come here that are foreign to us as Indigenous people. We look at Canada. Canada is wants to celebrate its 150th birthday in 2017. As Indigenous people, we don't want to see that birthday come for Canada. We want to see our own Indigenous ways, our sovereignty, our independence. This is what we want to see as Indigenous people. And I've never traveled to Leelu Island, and I'm sure that I'll be going soon at some point, but I've traveled to Unistoten and to Mattie, to Shutukath, to these other places, camps that have been set up throughout so-called British Columbia in defense of our territories. And it takes a lot of sacrifice, and people are actually sacrificing their lives and their freedom standing up for their land, like Wolverine. He faced off against 450 RCMP. He had thousands of rounds of ammunition shot at him. These are the stands that our protectors are taking at Unistoten when the RCMP, threatens to come in, and even threatens by even coming up to the bridge. And we've seen the pictures with Freda face to face with the RCMP at the bridge, and it woke up a lot of our people across this whole country, that if a woman could stand there and face off with this colonial police force defending our territory, then what's stopping everybody else? We've seen this Idle No More movement, flood across the country. We're asking for everybody, and this is the purpose of this webinar, is to call out everybody. This is a call to action for everybody to stand up and defend our territory. We need 100, we need 1,000 more Unistoten camps, more Leelu Island camps and Mattie camps. We need them sparked throughout their territory, sparking that fires of resistance. We're going to go to some questions. I'm going to see if there's some questions here. I know that there was one question for you, Matthew. It was saying, as a support, how would we access transportation to Leelu Island?
I think you'd have to get in contact with Christy Brown through Facebook, and then from there we can start the process of getting to Leelu Island.
Okay, so Christy Brown, and there's also a Facebook community page, isn't there?
Yes, Stop Pacific Northwest LNG.
Okay, so everybody will put that at the bottom of this YouTube link as well, so people will know how to get in contact. There's also another question. Let's see who would be the best to answer. Got any tips or suggestion for settlers to become better allies with First Nations people and issues? So I don't know who wants to answer that. Maybe Freda, since she's dealing with the massive camp, Unistoten.
We actually, during our action camp, have workshops for settler people to take to have them better understand Indigenous organizations and understand how you best can be supports and how you could work with our people rather than trying to take over our movements and trying to run and do things on your own. It teaches them how to learn how to respect Indigenous people and their lands and how to do it respectfully without trying to take over, making decisions on their own that they need to, as well as industry and government, they must have consent of the chief and clan of any territory they're on. They must have consent from the territory holders before they try and organize or do anything. So we have that during action camp, and also Rising Tide has organized some down in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver to have workshops down there to teach people on how to carry themselves and how to be good supports, as well as Zoe Blunt from Victoria Force Action Network also held some workshops in Victoria to have people better prepared for when they do come up to Indigenous Frontlines to how to behave and how to best be of service to help block these projects.
Manipulative people?
And we do have rules, guidelines, and you're not guaranteed to stay if you create problems or you're manipulative and try to cause divisions in the camp, then we are forced to remove people. So we ensure that the comfort levels of everybody is safe there, and we don't have prejudices, and we're very respectful of everybody. Like, we're respectful of our supporters, and they need to show the same respect back to the hosts. So.
Okay, thank you, Freda. Toggestai, here's a question for you. Someone had posted. It says, how best to mobilize our Indigenous brothers and sisters of other nations to make their own declaration of nationhood sovereignty?
We've been trying to talk with people from all these different nations, and the people who seem to be listening the most are the ones who were raised traditionally. All the communities that we've gone to, there's some amazing people who've stepped up to the plate and said, you know, we understand what you're talking about. My grandmother talked with me about this, or my grandfather did this, or my uncle used to do this with me. I was raised understanding these things, and I can't imagine going against what their expectations are. You know, those are the people that we need to reach. Those are the people who understand what their responsibilities are. They're also the people who have the proper teachings to walk forward with the teachings that they've got to begin making change for their own people, so that their people will be beneficiaries for their actions. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about is you know, a lot of Indigenous leadership that are given recognition today are people who are only thinking about themselves. They look for opportunities to generate funds to benefit themselves. The people who are actually making a difference now, the people who are actually making waves and getting down on our lands and doing stuff, are the people who are being selfless. There's a lot of people who are doing this voluntarily. Like the majority, I think all the frontline warriors today are actually doing this on a voluntary basis because they know what their responsibilities are. You know, all the warriors that you're going to talk to are going to talk about all these people who taught them, these people who influenced them as they were growing up, learning about their culture, learning about their traditions, learning about ceremony, and especially learning about their responsibilities. So if we're going to reach out to people to start making change, start to look for those things. Find people in a community who can mentor you to become a good warrior. And a warrior isn't all about somebody who's going out and looking for violence and looking for confrontation. Often a warrior is somebody in the community who's willing to do something for the elders, who's willing to do something for the women and children, who's willing to go and provide for their community so that the community will benefit from their actions. That's what a warrior is. A warrior is also responsible for making sure that their territories, the integrity of their territories, the integrity of their families, the integrity of their community is never compromised. So they take those responsibilities very seriously, and you train for that.
Yes, thank you, Toggestai. And a lot of people have that confusion with warriors, and then they mix it with militants and radicals and terrorists that are standing up on the front lines. And this is very dangerous when we start categorizing our people as under those terms. One of the questions here is asking. We have a bunch of more questions here. It's going off here with the questions. This question is for Ricardo. In Alaska, a massive mine about the size and larger than Mount Polley will be going into a major salmon and fishing watershed that provides for survival of the Yupik Indigenous people. The mega mine proposal is in the environmental review stage in the U.S., and all info about the massive earthen tailings dam is from the Canadian Barrick Gold. The mine is called Donlin Gold. does your international organization have recommendations for the public comment review based on your work and observations to address the tailings dam? Alaska First Nations have a much more corrupt system of policy in our unceded territories and massive language disparities.
Well, thanks for the question. I think you guys would probably argue which one is more corrupt. It's hard to say, you know. In that case, Barrick Gold has a very bad reputation in other countries, and it looks like it's going to be another one of those same kinds of dams, a wet tailings dam. These dams are basically designed to fail. This is what they're designed to last the life of the mine, and if the company can disappear, they don't care what happens after that. They say it's supposed to last forever in perpetuity, thousands of years, whatever, but they don't. They just simply don't. The recommendations that came out after Mount Polley are being completely ignored. They put together this panel of experts to come up with recommendations, and what these mining engineers says, they're not hippies. These are mining engineers saying best practices now is to put tailings underground, and when you can't put tailings underground, you got to do dry stacking, which means you don't have a wet tailings dam. You compact the tailings, you take all the water out of it, and it just becomes a massive mound of dry silt, basically. Now, this doesn't mean there's no environmental impact. This is still a mining engineer's perspective. A community's perspective might be, we don't want this giant mound of dirt leveling our forest. That's completely fair as well. Or this mound of dry dirt can still be very chemically active and cause a lot of acid mine drainage. That's another huge problem, because acid mine drainage from the Roman very long time. So I think for this review stage, you have to call in people who are willing to call out the consulting companies and the government and the mining companies on their bullshit. So I mean, in our case, we're not involved with this. We just don't have enough people to answer all the calls from everywhere. It's only half a dozen of us. And you also, like mentioned before, you got to be cautious with these big NGOs. A lot of the time, they're very good at spending millions of dollars and doing absolutely nothing, or coming in and pushing aside the Indigenous people and basically taking over a movement. And that's the most dangerous thing you can do, because then you start having backroom deals, you start having people negotiating on a land that's not theirs. And what needs to happen is people come in, and technical people like me need to be on the sidelines. So we need to be tools for people on the front lines. We need to be the monkey wrench. Maybe when you don't need the monkey wrench, you need the Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, we'll come in and do that part. But we can't come in and take over a movement. We can't take the leadership role. We got to step aside, be technical tools, and that's it, and let the frontliners take care of the rest. I don't know if that answers your question, but this is a critical stage where you still have a chance to stop this mine, and it doesn't always, it can't always end at the technical questions. You gotta basically say, we don't. Sometimes you have to say, we don't care what your results show. We just don't want this project to happen on our lands, because I've never seen a large-scale mine that didn't have destructive impacts on the environment.
Thank you. We're coming up to the end of our webinar, but I would like to give the opportunity for everybody to say some last comments, and also give their information that people could contact you at, or where people could donate financially to, or if there's any other donations or help or assistance that you're asking for. Put your call to action or your call for help in your last little soundbite out. Oh, let's start with Matthew.
Okay. It's me?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to, anybody who doesn't know about Leelu Island or know why we're fighting for it should come out and have a look, because it's, you'll see why. It's worth the fight, and anybody that wants to get in contact with the island can do it through the page. On Facebook, it's Stop Pacific Northwest LNG. You'll be able to get into contact through that. I think there's a link there that you can go to for the funding, like if you want to donate, make any donations. But I just want to give a shout out to my brother Don, who I started this fight with, who called me out to this island, and Ken and Don Sr. I'm going to stand and fight this company right to the end, and I stand in solidarity with all of you guys.
Okay, thank you. And a big loud war cry to all the people out on the front lines. We also will go to Ricardo, see if there's any last words that you'd like to say.
Thanks, Kanahus. Just want to say thanks again for pulling me into this great crowd, and congratulations on getting this energy going on all these different movements that are happening right now. Things are shifting. We're shifting into different times, and people are starting to wake up. Even people from the cities are starting to wake up bit by bit and join on to this land defense, because without the land, none of us can survive. So just a lot of strength, a lot of thanks and gratitude to all the people involved in land defense, and hopefully we can pull in a bunch more young people who are fed up with feeding into the same exploitive systems and ready to do something different.
Okay, thank you. Now Toggestai, and then we'll and Freda.
Yeah, people can go to we have a Facebook page called Luxamisu Stronghold, and we give updates on some of the activities that we're doing. We haven't launched the fundraiser for the cabin yet, and we're expecting it to be launched sometime within the next couple of weeks. But it's going to give an insight into the funds that we need to try and get the cabin out on the territory. It's going to be a cabin that is going to be fully occupied. It's not like a part-time cabin where land defenders can come and stay at once in a while. It's going to be a full-time home. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next little while. So we're really looking forward to that. If people want to visit it, like I said, the Facebook page is Luxamisu Stronghold, LIKHTSAMISYU Stronghold, and we're expecting to have a website up sometime soon as well. So keep an eye out for it, and we're going to keep lending our support to all these other front lines until ours gets up.
Our website was down for the last month or so, but we're working on getting it back up. It's hunas.dencamp.com, and we also have a Facebook page, hunas.dencamp. And right now, the only way to donate is at fhouston@gmail.com. You can do e-transfers until our website's back up. Once the website's back up, people can donate through PayPal or e-transfers. So, and yeah. And if you want to visit, the website tells you how to register and how to get, we have a screening process to ensure that, like, the safety of our people, safety of the camp, people have to be screened to come and visit, and even media has to be screened. We don't allow just any media in because they've tended to distort the stories a lot of the time, so we've been using independent media to help us get the messaging out, and we've been in support of all the other movements along the coast because Leelu Island, our salmon, they go there and they go up to Alaska, and in 4 years they come back to spawn in our waters. So all our waters are connected through Leelu and Madili, and even the one up in Alaska. I see that there's people posting there that all of our waters are connected one way or another, and we all need to work together, because if many groups are all working together, then it's much more difficult for industry and government trying to bulldoze over just one group when you got a whole mass group of people, because all our waters are connected, and without our water, we have no land. Land base depends on the water, and we depend on water. So water is life, and we all depend on that, and we all need each other to ensure that all our lands and our waters are protected.
Okay, thank you, Freda. I'd just like to let you all know, the viewers know, that all this information, the websites and how to donate to the crowd fund is going to be available through the I Don't Know More website. I'd also like to acknowledge the people behind the scenes that you don't see, the I Don't Know More tech team that has come to help lend their assistance so that we are able to put together this webinar. Again, I'd like to say that this webinar is dedicated to our warrior, Elder Wolverine. He's just got out of the hospital and he's back home finally and still healing and recuperating, but we want to send our love and our prayers to him. He has fed the front lines. He grew a massive garden this past year, the Nourish the Nation Garden Project, where he grew squash and potatoes and carrots and onions and a lot of good organic food, and he was able to donate and supply some of these frontline camps, including the Unistoten camp. I see here that Matthew would like to say one more thing, so let's hear what he has to say.
Thanks, Kanahus. I just want to put a call out to all the Tsimshian warriors out there. You come and stand with your brothers and sisters and fight. We'll be waiting.
Okay, thank you. And that goes to all our Indigenous warriors and out there on Turtle Island, like Freda said, because we care so much about the water. So I'd like to thank all the viewers out there that came to join us today, and I'm sure we're going to continue bringing the voices of the front lines out to the people out there. And thank you for watching, and thank you for joining us. Ciao.